Speaking of Florida State, they spearheaded a lot of the conversation about unequal revenue distribution in the ACC because of what they are trying to do. They're trying to get out. They want more money. That's been their big complaint. So the ACC has tried to placate them somewhat with a plan and a system to distribute revenue based on who's watching the games and who's performing well. Well, Vandy just had a huge win, and now we're going to have a discussion about, well, Vandy may kind of get screwed here and have less money sooner rather than later. Because Dellenger notes the smash capital proposals, unequal distribution, as well as uneven distribution changes in the ACC and the college football playoff have charted a path for such a structure to emerge in the SEC and Big Ten. All right, that's a big jumbled sentence. Let me translate for you. Because the ACC has started unequal revenue sharing, and because we're now seeing proposals like this from private equity firms about a super league have unequal revenue distribution, it's got the SEC and Big Ten folks thinking, hey, why are we paying Vandy this much money? Again, not really fair right now to Vandy riding the high of the Alabama win. I'm sorry to do that to you, Commodores. But they're saying, why does Northwestern get the same amount of money? Why does Purdue get the same amount of money that we do? We're Ohio State. And as it just so happens to be, we have a quote here on this from Ohio State's athletic director, or former, rather, Ohio State athletic director, Gene Smith. He said, quote, "It's a concept that has to be considered for certain level schools." The concept being unequal revenue distribution. Whether or not it can be done, I don't know, but there is a reality to what certain schools bring to their conference, and it needs to be considered. But I do believe in the conference structure. Ensuring other schools in the conference maintain significant financial support is critical. So he kind of tries to halfway hedge at the end there and be like, all right, well, we can't just totally cut these guys off. We need to make sure everybody's getting something. And I don't want to totally leave the Northwesterns of the world behind in the conference. Like, they can stay, but we need to look at some unequal revenue distribution here. That's a former Ohio State athletic director, not the current Ohio State athletic director. If you are curious, the schools that were mentioned here, this is the list you don't want to be on. Ross Dellenger listed out 4 examples here of schools in the Big Ten or SEC that could be on the chopping block with this. It's Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Northwestern, and Purdue. So I got 3 of the 4. I spared you for a moment, Mississippi State, but unfortunately, you did get taken down. Dellenger says that according to figures shared with the administrators, 18 schools produced 60% of the broadcast viewership over the last 7 years. Within those 18, 6 schools generated a majority of that. So here's your top 6 in schools that I'm sure would be locked into Tier 1 status: Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Texas, and Notre Dame. They're generating 60% of the broadcast viewership. That's what we've got. Very interesting proposal. That's kind of the basics of what you have. And now the last question becomes, how realistic actually is this? Okay, John, you just told me about this private equity proposal that Ross Dellenger is writing extensively about and has been shown to 25 athletic directors across the country, some of whom from the Big Ten and the SEC. Okay, that's great. It would have unequal revenue distribution. It would cut out games against the G5 and FCS to produce more games between all the Power 4 conference schools. And there would be relegation and promotion and an expanded playoff. That's all great. How realistic is this actually? Because we heard about this with College Sports Tomorrow, the other Super League proposal recently, and it kind of got shut down. I again will tell you, I think it is more realistic than you are probably thinking, and the way that people would initially react to this. And we're just conditioned to some of this because the SEC and the Big Ten are dominant forces right now, the way the system is. Why would anything ever change? But there are some that seem to think this is worth exploring. Here is what Brett Yormark said. We'll start with that. Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark says, in a world of uncertainty, you've got to kick the tires. Okay, so Brett Yormark is at least on board with exploring this. ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips expressed to some privately a willingness to discuss the SMASH model during a summit of his athletic directors next Monday in Charlotte. Even NCAA President Charlie Baker has been made aware of the proposal and its concepts, which, like, okay, cool. Glad somebody CC'd Charlie on the email. I don't know what the NCAA really cares anymore. Like, whatever, they're going to do their thing. NCAA, you're just going to have to deal with it. If the SMASH model represents the, quote, right path, one conference executive told Yahoo Sports, then why wouldn't the conferences with the most influence figure it out, put out to bid the new entity to media companies, and get free media money? That goes back to the discussion from earlier where some admins were saying, why wouldn't we just do this ourselves? But contended one ACC administrator, you're going to have to involve a private equity firm to get the numbers you want. And I would contend that is probably true. So I guess if there is a pushback to this and saying, hey, I really don't think you can tell me, John, that athletic directors in the Big Ten and SEC are at least wanting this to be explored. I have my doubts. I have my real doubts that it happens because you'd have to get private equity involved. And right now, the Big Ten and SEC have huge financial advantages without getting private equity involved. Why would they go do it if you're going to have to do that to get the numbers that you need? I would say maybe because the Big 12 then starts to use private equity and closes the gap, and, you might be forced to in some capacity. Still a lot to play out here. And as one power conference athletic director told Dellenger, Sankey and Petiti have to look at this and give it a sign to take it further. If those two don't want to do it, then it's not going to work. I think there are a lot of ADs in their leagues, though, who want to see it have a good vetting. Okay. I mentioned this earlier, but Sankey has certainly not made it seem like he's very interested in doing much of this. He went on Urban Meyer's podcast recently and said, quote, I don't want to dumb down the Southeastern Conference to be a part of some Super League notion with 70 teams that some people speculate would happen. They want to be us, and that's on them to figure it out, not on me to bring myself back down to earth. Look, as much as I hate Sankey, I understand where he's coming from on that. I would just counter with, be careful what you wish for. A lot of this is about making a product that's going to be viable for the long term, not eventually have diminishing returns for you in value. If you cut out too much of the country, you disenfranchise enough people, viewership goes down, interest goes down over time. We're talking over a long period of time. And then at some point, all of a sudden the money spigot shuts off. You don't have more money to gain by upping TV dollars and such. So that is something that they should be cognizant of, I would say, at least with all of this. And that would be my response to him right there. But to close here are some other quotes from Ross Dellenger. Quote, too many schools are saying this makes a lot of sense, says one supporter of the model who presides over a power conference athletic department. Quote, we're not ready for it, rebutted a high-ranking Big Ten school official. There has not been a tipping point yet, but at least he is saying there's not been a tipping point yet. Will it happen eventually? Yes, said an SEC school executive. It's all inevitable. Will it happen eventually? Yes, said an SEC school executive. It's all inevitable. Will it happen in the next 15 to 20 years? A chortle emanates from the other side of the line. Oh, no, much sooner than that. So much sooner than 15 to 20 years. Look, that's honestly, I would just say as a Big 12 fan, giving you my perspective, reading that seems relatively encouraging.